To welcome to the Mass General Brigham Infectious Disease Fellowship Program virtual open house. The goal for tonight is just to tell you a little bit more about our program and hopefully give you just a little bit more insight into the fellowship itself. Um, I People are messaging me in the chat. It's going to be hard for me to see, so apologies if I miss your chat. And please feel free to Jen or Daniel to flag me if I've missed something important. So I'm just going to start off with our mission statement, just so everyone can kind of get a sense of what our goal of our fellowship program is. So the mission of our mghbwhid fellowship program is to train infectious disease physicians for clinical excellence, serving patients on a spectrum from the local to global community, to train experts in fundamental translational or clinical research, to answer questions related to scientific community's understanding of infectious disease, train leaders in ID to teach colleagues and future generations, and recruit and retain a diverse group of fellows to improve the health of a diverse patient population that our institutions serve. So that just hopefully provides a bit of framework as to what really we're striving to do in this training program itself. And then to take a moment to overview the fellowship program itself. We are a 2-year ACGME accredited program. And I'm going to walk through some aspects of the first year of the program, and then I'm going to ask some colleagues to comment a bit more about specifically year 2. In the first year of the fellowship program, it largely looks the same for all of our fellows. You're doing the bulk of your time is on inpatient ID consults, and we are very much a joint program between MGH and the Brigham. So that top picture there is a picture from the Brigham. The second picture on the right there is a picture of MGH pre-construction. We've got some new buildings going up. And then we also currently have a partnership with Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, which is partnered with the Brigham. That will be changing in years to come, but for right now, our fellows still do work with the Dana-Farber. And then we also have a partnership with the Massachusetts Eye and Ear Infirmary. And so when you're on consults at MGH, you'll also do consults at the Mass Eye and Ear as well. And so in addition to the general ID program that you get exposure to, you also have exposure to a very wide transplant and immunocompromised host infectious disease training program. And I apologize for my daughter coming in. As I mentioned, I'm solo parenting. Yes, you can draw. Yes. You have an opportunity to care for a wide range of transplant and immunocompromised host patients, both at MGH and the Brigham and Women's Hospital. And then when you're not doing an elective, when you're not doing an inpatient time, we have time for electives, outpatient clinical practice, and clinical microbiology. And during that first year and into the second year as well, you'll have the opportunity to do a half day of clinic a week with a paired preceptor. And that's the same paired preceptor you have for the duration of your fellowship to help you gain the ambulatory ID skills needed. I do want to ask Dr. Rocio Hurtado to comment just a little bit on the community health elective experience that has been built in recent years, just to highlight one activity that can be done during that elective experience. Rocio, are you able to comment?
Absolutely. Welcome, everybody. It's an incredible joy to be part of this community, and we welcome you. We take care of the most interesting and often most stigmatized patients in the world. And so Community Health ID is really a bespoke, custom-made elective that all of you will be eligible anywhere from a week to 3 weeks, typically done in the first year, but also open to second years, depending on what their track is. And we have a menu of potential opportunities to be done in that elective, ranging from clinical experiences at our community health centers. We have 2 ID doctors, one of whom also practices in our MGH main campus side, Dr. Chu, who hosts fellows. We have many liaisons and former fellows and graduates and faculty affiliates in the public health sector, including the Boston Public Health Commission, the Department of Public Health. We also have contact and the ability to place fellows who are interested in sexual health in the community experiences, their mobile clinics, and other such things. And so I speak on behalf of my co-director, Amir Moharib, who has really taken the lead in the Community Health ID elective. And so any of you who are interested would reach out to both Amir and to me, and depending on your interests, would be able to access this elective. So we're really, really excited at this opportunity.
Thanks so much. And is Nestle still on? If she is, if you'd like to comment, Nestle, a little bit about the outpatient ID experience, that would be wonderful.
Yes, happy to, Molly. So our goal in the outpatient experience is really to do two things. One, to give you continuity from the inpatient to the outpatient setting, because as you know, a lot of important diagnostic and management decisions happen after hospital discharge. And the second thing is to have you see a wide variety of patients, persons living with HIV in a continuity setting, but in addition, new referrals for really every infectious disease diagnosis you can imagine. Those may be urgent, they may be routine, but we try hard to route you the patients that are not sort of things that might be better evaluated in a general medicine setting, or may be multiple evaluations for a problem that doesn't have an infectious etiology. We try hard to give you things that are sort of fresh ID patients. We see the same very wide spectrum of patients that Rocio described, and we pride ourselves on seeing everyone who comes to our door, thanks to the healthcare coverage provided by, as we used to call it, Romney Care, but universal health insurance in the US. So it's I think the part of infectious disease practice I would never have given up for anything is outpatient care, the longitudinal relationships. So look forward to having you all in clinic.
Thanks so much, Nestle. And so that kind of is a brief overview, and we can answer more questions about year one. Year two is really where our fellows start to differentiate themselves a bit more. And in large part, there's kind of two main tracks that our fellows will take in that second year, either a clinical track or more the physician scientist track. And I want to be clear, they're not mutually exclusive, but depending on what your career goals are, it may make sense to proceed with one track or the other. Although we certainly have had fellows who combine, who have combined both the clinical track with the physician scientist track in years past. And I'm actually going to turn now to Paul to have him comment a little bit more on the HIV track and what the fellows can expect from that experience.
Thanks, Molly, and thanks for joining us tonight. We've had a HIV fellowship at both hospitals since the early 1990s, and not surprisingly, over time, that experience has really shifted from one that focused a lot on inpatient care to one that is predominantly outpatient care. And the aspects of it that make it different is that it is a very intense outpatient experience. There are 3 to 4 scheduled outpatient sessions a week with HIV and general ID, as well as some sort of teaching obligation, which includes our HIV conference, which is weekly at both hospitals, as well as a lot of opportunities to teach elsewhere. And so on this Zoom is Daniel Solomon, who did this, and several of our former fellows are now our faculty, and they did teaching at Harvard Medical School, teaching of residents, teaching of non-medical residents, so OBGYN, emergency room, anything related to HIV and its interface with the hospitals. And then we also ask that the HIV fellow do something scholarly, which is often writing a review or a book chapter or a small study or case series. And these are things that can be accomplished within that year. As you may know, ID fellowship is 2 years long or longer. And some people, as Molly mentioned, who do this actually then the year after that start doing their investigative pathway, but it does delay it 1 year. I would estimate that about 1 in 5 of our HIV fellows do that, whereas 4 out of the 5 complete their ID fellowship at the end of their second year HIV fellowship, and then are very, very well suited to jobs in clinical ID all around the country. And if you want, you can email me and I can say where they've been placed. And it's not just at MGB, but it's actually all around the country in both academic medical centers and community health centers. So that's pretty much it. I'm sure that there's more to it than that, but that's this short speech.
Thanks, Paul. Really appreciate it. I'll turn now to Anne Woolley, who I didn't have the chance to introduce earlier. Dr. Woolley is one of our transplant and immunocompromised host physicians who is situated at Brigham and Women's Hospital. And she helps to run the transplant ID program for our fellows over on the Brigham side of town. And so, Anne, would you have the chance to say a few words about the transplant ID track for our fellows?
Absolutely. Thank you, Molly. And thank you all. I think that Molly just set this up really nicely when she was talking about all the opportunities that exist for being able to care for immunocompromised patients at both MGH as well as at the Brigham and Dana-Farber. And our program for our track for our second year, and fellows also have the option on the Brigham side to potentially do a third year as well if they would like to have some clinical research, be a bigger component or so of their career. That it really, similar to what Paul said as far as the HIV track, the focus really is definitely in the outpatient setting and really about, I think, the real difference and the key and what I loved as a fellow, and I think all our fellows really like, is the fact that continuity piece, that both inpatient time, but really having really good and rigorous outpatient in both our solid organ transplant clinics and our oncology clinics. And what's really nice is that our clinics are actually located in the solid organ transplant clinic or at Dana-Farber in the really working so closely with our reciprocal services. And I think that's really what such a key aspects to it, because the learning then is not only obviously focused on the infectious disease component, but you're really also needing to master in terms of what does it mean to have a transplant, the surgical side, the immunosuppression, the oncologic treatments. And so this really helps to foster that rather than having it be one more thing to have to learn because it's the natural fit. And also I think what other things that is really nice this year for our fellows is that they then really get to have that relationship with our reciprocal services, as well as that relationship and continuity from the inpatient to the outpatient setting for patients. And I think that really helps a lot, and also has helped with the scholarly work that our fellows get to do in the second year, and for those that then go on and choose to do a third year for clinical research, because then our services know us so well. And so therefore, when we're doing clinical trials, getting patients to be enrolled and getting really buy-in from our oncology and or transplant services is not at all a hard reach, and they know us so well, our fellows so well. And so that part has been, I think, a huge plus. And so we also in this year make sure we put in all the aspects that's important in terms of transplant ID, as far as attending the listing meetings, understanding what it means to take a donor call, really all the aspects of it. And there's a lot of flexibility built into it. There are no transplant ID fellows that you will talk to that had the same year. There's obviously a core curriculum part of it, but we really try to tailor that year to what the ultimate goals are of the fellow, as far as whether or not it's medical education, whether or not it's clinical investigation, whether or not it is mainly, the clinician educator, but quality improvement kind of track. And how do we actually then sprinkle that in? And so what you are able to work with, you have the first year where you're with, as Molly said, your clinic preceptor, you keep that clinic for your second year. But then when we add in the oncology and the transplant clinics, you then get the opportunity to work with other, at least 2 other faculty members and have that really close relationship. And so I think if I can summarize some of the key aspects of it, is really having that really good mentorship with the transplant ID faculty at both MGH and Brigham, and having that benefit of being able to do, if you're based at the Brigham, have a month at MGH and vice versa. Having that really good continuity of understanding not just how to take care of the acute patient and then a follow-up once or twice of the patient, but if that patient then gets readmitted, having the flexibility of being an added fellow on the inpatient team, so you get to actually help manage that and have that continuity piece. And then the third component, as I mentioned, as far as also then being able to work so closely with our reciprocal services, and that really fostering the scholarly work and understanding the overall picture and how do we really fit in with our reciprocal services.
Thanks so much, Anne, for that overview. And we have Elise Hannaford on, who is doing transplant ID time, so we can maybe hear a little bit later about her experience as well, because I will be asking her to say a few things. I want to introduce Dr. Michael Klompus as well, who I didn't have the chance to introduce earlier. Dr. Klompus helps to run the stewardship and infection control track, specifically based at the Brigham, although we have these clinical tracks are based on both sides of town. So Michael, can I ask you to say a few words about the stewardship and infection control training pathway?
Yes, thank you. So first of all, hello to everybody. It's a pleasure to know of your interest in our program, which is great. So in our second year, we tried to immerse the fellow into the operations of infection control and antimicrobial stewardship. So that means embedding within the infection control and stewardship teams to attend their working meetings and discussions for both the local hospital and system level policy level discussions, and getting involved in a practical project that's of benefit or operational need. So on the infection control side, that can be something like investigating a cluster of whatever the cluster is of the day when that comes around. For the stewardship team, it might be a venture to try to improve antibiotic utilization in terms of breadth of spectrum or early discontinuations, or switch from IV to PO, or decreasing utilization of fluoroquinolones. Whatever the fellow and the stewardship group or the infection control group collectively decide is of value. We have a strong academic component to our program as well. We publish a lot. And so our hope is that this project will be both beneficial for the institution, improving infection control or stewardship operations, and an academic product that you can point to with pride in the future.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Michael, for that. So those were kind of the overview of the clinical tracks, which, as I mentioned, exist both sides of town. And so, ultimately, we have a lot of options, for that clinical training. The other kind of main track that people will then proceed with is a physician scientist track. And here's where I'm going to actually ask Dr. Jonathan Lee to say a few words about our physician scientist track and all the opportunities that exist in that space.
Thank you, Molly, and welcome everyone. Really excited to see you all here. I'm Jonathan Lee. I'm a physician scientist. I run a translational virology laboratory at the Brigham. Also involved in some clinical research as well, and I'm here in my capacity as the Brigham ID Fellowship Research Director. And I have to say, when it comes to research opportunities from a very unbiased point of view, I think we are second to none. And we have a real wealth of potential mentors, funding and training opportunities. In terms of mentors, not only do you have access to those investigators at the Brigham and Mass General, but also surrounding institutes like the Broad Institute, the Reagan Institute, MIT, Harvard School of Public Health. There are, fellows who are doing clinical research, basic research, translational, and then research in, as we've just heard, in transplant and antimicrobial stewardship as well. I mean, I think whatever you want to do, whatever skill set you want to learn, I have no doubt that you're going to find a mentor or a team of mentors here who can help you get there. In addition, there are a number of funding opportunities. We've got 3 different T32s for both HIV and non-HIV researchers. There's a CFAR Developmental Awards, KL2. We have K review committees and K to R transition programs that'll help you get to the next level beyond your training grants. And then for those who are interested in clinical research, there's opportunities for clinical research training through the Harvard School of Public Health or the Mongan Institute. And then there's also lots of kind of continuous education for both clinical and laboratory researchers through Harvard Medical School, as well as the Harvard Catalyst. And I would say that our fellowship is committed to helping you find the right mentors for you and to design a research training program that fits your career goals. And as Molly mentioned, even for those of you who are going to be clinician educators or as part of a different track, the opportunity is going to be there for you for research to play a role in your training and to gain expertise in conducting research as well. So I'm thrilled to have a chance to talk to you all. Don't hesitate to contact me if you have any questions after today. I'm always happy to answer questions. So thanks, Molly.
Thanks so much, Jonathan, for that. And I see Dr. Dan Kritzkes has joined, and I didn't have the opportunity to introduce him earlier. Dr. Kritzkes is the division chief for ID at Brigham and Women's Hospital. And Dan, would you like to say a few words, anything we missed in kind of our broad program overview from what you were able to hear?
No, I think that was a great overview. Let me just very quickly add my own welcome. It's really great to see all of you on the Zoom this evening, and we're really thrilled about your interest in infectious diseases and happy to give you whatever information will help you make decisions to apply to our program.
Thanks so much, Dan. I'm going to turn things now to Daniel Solomon to talk a little bit more about the various resources and opportunities. Some of these have been touched upon already, but can be perhaps re-emphasized, and some of these may be sort of new things. So Daniel, over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Molly, and welcome again for the 14th time. I was a fellow, 2013. Molly and I were co-fellows together, and I took over as the associate program director from Paul, who had been doing it for a couple of decades 2 years ago. It has been so fun to work with Molly and sort of partner with her as we continue to grow the program in excellence. And I think you've heard a lot about the structure of the program already. I was an HIV fellow in 2014. Happy to talk to folks individually if you want to hear more about that pathway. In terms of opportunities, I think a lot of them were already highlighted in some of the tracks that we talked about. We have tons of grant opportunities, tons of mentor opportunities. And what I want to highlight here is that we really try to tailor your training program to your areas of interest, your level of experience, and your interest, your sort of like level of expertise. And so that first year of fellowship, as Molly said, everyone sort of gets the same rigorous clinical training. And then as you advance into year 2, the opportunities that you see on the screen here really can be tailored to your interests and your career goals. So things like research opportunities abound. And then there are also some sort of opportunities that everyone gets. So everyone's a member of the Mass ID Society. You come to Brigham and Mass General, you become part of the big Mass General Brigham community. You get to link up with other fellows who are in other programs. There are specific programs for women in medicine, people with little kids. Molly and I both have kids at home running around, as you saw, but also some of our fellows have children either during fellowship or before fellowship, and we're really supportive of families. As part of the program, we do expect you to sort of develop some skills in public speaking. So all of our first year fellows give at least one talk at our lecture series during Wednesday conference. That's a Boston-wide series, and you'll be talking about a clinical case that you've seen. And then in the second year, there's the opportunity to speak again at this large Boston conference on an area that you've been working on where you've developed expertise. So I'm not going to reiterate all the resources on the slide, just to say that these are sort of some of many opportunities that allow you to carve your own path. And then one last thing I want to say, and I'll turn it back to you, Molly, is that we really try to foster independence and autonomy in that second year as you carve your own path. But one thing that Molly and I have been really intentional about is also building community. So although people are sort of doing their different things, we really try to bring people together for learning in person when possible. I hope Elise is able to speak about how bonded her class has become, because I think it's not just you're coming for a program to follow your own individual path. If you come to the program, we really think about you as part of a bigger whole. And I think that's one of the really wonderful things about our program, about how the fellows come together as a unit.
Thanks, Daniel. It's such a nice segue to our next slide, which is about the fellows and perhaps some life events outside the fellowship. So Elise, if you're on, are you able to speak? Dr. Elise Hannaford is one of our second year ID fellows, as I mentioned, in the transplant immunocompromised host track, but also in the physician scientist track. So she's kind of one of these fellows that's bridging the two. Elise, are you able to comment on what it's been like to be a fellow here and life outside the hospital, maybe?
Sure. Can you hear me? I have my headphones in, but I can take them out if easier.
We can hear you.
Okay. So my name is Elise. So yeah, I had, I guess, well, not really a traditional pathway, but I started out thinking that I wanted to do HIV research. And then sort of through being in the MGB system and just seeing just really how amazing the immunocompromised host program is, and like both at Mass General and at Brigham, and really the incredible research that's done over at Dana-Farber, I ended up switching into our immunocompromised host track over at the Brigham. And while I guess it's traditionally a little bit more of a clinical pathway with the additional third year option for research, sorry, I realize I just asked you to talk about my hobbies. Is it okay if I just give you like a one sentence of like what, anyway? So I mostly work right now on clinical trials in the immunocompromised host realm, and then also have some inpatient time and outpatient time, as Anne mentioned as well. But yeah, I could definitely speak to our class. I mean, what was great about our class is that we came from, well, regardless of the class makeup, but what was, I guess, maybe unique about our class is that we came from 10 different programs, and a lot of people came to Boston without having another support system. And so we all sort of became quite close friends. We hang out a lot. Molly can speak to this as well. We all just went to Cape Cod for the weekend last weekend, and Molly even came up for an afternoon, which was really fun. But we tried to, I mean, the first year of fellowship, like, it's definitely tough. It's a lot of consults. I mean, it's kind of like it is a bonding experience where it's really nice whether you're, so 50% of people will be at MGH and 50% will be at Brigham at a given time, but everyone sits in the same workroom. And we definitely were like constantly asking each other questions, like, especially, at the beginning when, I can definitely say every single attending is very approachable, and you can, like, people are on first name basis, you can text attendings any questions, but you still, there's something nice about being able to ask your co-fellows before you go to the attending level to say, oh, here's what I was thinking. And we definitely pick each other's brains all the time. I think there's lots of fun restaurants at both hospitals that people go to, after work for dinner, for drinks. Like, I think even, I think there's lots of, I think our class like leaned into more of like the mghbwhid events with the other co-fellows, maybe initially, and then we kind of just decided that we preferred hanging out amongst ourselves and now do more things us. But there's like tons of opportunities to meet other people. I can speak to more of anything.
Thank you so much. And just to highlight, some of the pictures here are taken from those class trips. I think Lisa's class has gone to Maine, New Hampshire, certainly throughout Massachusetts, including Cape Cod, as mentioned. So some photos from that. We take the fellows to some of the art museums in town for some art and medicine events in the winter months of the year, when it can be hard to spend time outside of work together. The art museum is a great place to do so. And again, just to highlight, we're a very family friendly bunch. So there's been lots of babies during fellowship. All right, and then I'm going to turn actually now to Daniel and also to Rocio to comment a little bit further about what happens after graduation. And Daniel, I'll have you kick things off, but I definitely want to make sure Rocio has the chance to comment on her mentorship program that she's put in place. Daniel?
Sure. So once again, I think that the things that our fellows do after graduation are wide-ranging, and I think reflect the broad range of interests that people come in with. And what you can see here is that the things that people go on to do really grow out of the different tracks that we've developed. And we have nurtured people onto clinical careers in many different spaces. We have a track record of excellence of people moving from fellowship into junior faculty roles, getting funded by the NIH. We have a really strong group of people in the last 10, 15 years who have come from our fellowship and then gone on to careers in public health, including Rochelle Walensky. You might have heard her name. She was part of our program. Robbie Goldstein has moved into being a leader at the Boston Public Health Commission. And then some of our graduates who are interested in research step into industry. We're very supportive of that. That's a pathway that's become super interesting to many people. And the intersection of research, clinical care, and industry is a really exciting space to make change. And then some people stay on to do additional training. So we can add on a year of microbiology training for people who want to have a foot in the microbiology lab. We've had a couple of fellows get a professional diploma in tropical medicine, and then there are other funding mechanisms to do additional research in global health as well. So what happens after graduation, like I said, I think reflects the broad range of interests that people come in with and what we're able to sort of nurture and send them off to. And before Rocio, maybe I'll pass it off to you in a moment, but over the last couple of years, we've developed, sometimes this might feel just really overwhelming to say like, oh my gosh, it sounds like a lot, but how do I find my way? So what we like to think about is when you come, you have mentorship, but you also have sort of a board of trustees where you're going to have a whole panel of mentors who will help you in different spaces. And we've actually formalized that over the past couple of years, where when you start to advance from first year into second year, you meet with a panel of people, including us, your program directors, and then people in your area of interest to help you think about what are the next steps as I try to launch. And with that, maybe I'll pass it over to Rocio to talk a little bit about how you've helped mentor folks in this transition from fellowship into careers.
Thank you, Daniel. So we're very excited that this year for folks in the clinical arena, and about half, sometimes a little bit more than half of our fellows are entering careers that have a significant clinical component, to launch the Best Foot Forward or BFF workshop. And we hold it twice a year at the beginning of the second year, as many people are starting their job search for the end of fellowship, and that sort of helps position folks, creates a compelling narrative, put together your portfolio, some interview tips, some negotiation tips, and then several of us are available for any coaching or additional mentorship through that process. And then just held last night, we had the Encore, or BFF number 2, which really focuses on transitioning into that role now that you are more rapidly approaching attendinghood, so to speak. There are additional initiatives. Next week during one of the research retreats, there will be a fellowship career sort of luncheon, so to speak, with individuals who have gone through other paths. And we really do hope to continue to expand this beyond clinical careers. But there is a whole network. We are not, none of us are islands, and our doors are open. And I really, really do mean that. And so this is really exciting for people to have access to that kind of to mentorship and guidance.
Thanks so much, Daniel and Rocio, for that. And we're happy to answer more questions about post-graduation as well in the Q&A session. So just some dates regarding the fellowship recruitment season for this year. If you're planning to apply this year, ERAS is opening next month, and we can start to download applications mid-July. And our interview dates are all on our website, but they'll be in September and October. And then the rank list is due in November, and then match day is December. We're planning on a fully virtual interview season once again, which is aligned with generally the guidance that we are receiving from our national society. We think it really kind of is important for equity purposes, and certainly from a climate, health, and financial cost to applicants as well. Certainly much more affordable to do virtual than in person. But if there's any questions about recruitment season, happy to take those as well. And with that, I think we can go ahead and I'll stop sharing.